Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Bo and Joe Show. It's Wednesday night. We're off to a great start. Bodine, your sign's upside down. All right, there we go. Everything's right in the world. It's Wednesday night. We're back for another episode of the Bo and Joe Show. Hi, everybody. We got Chris P. Bacon behind the scenes and my main man, Bodine, on screen. How are you, Bodine? Uh, we, we cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you now. So start that again. How are you?
I said if the sign was any indication of me holding it upside down, it goes. No, it's just been crazy. We had some back back. What the word? I'm brain dead. We're getting some layover of the hurricane that came through Florida and through South Carolina. So it's been literally raining here for 3 days in a row. In the Philadelphia area, but it's supposed to warm up tomorrow and be sunny. So that's a good. It's going to be like 75 degrees. Got to love that. But other than that, things are good. Just very busy. Life is crazy right now. Very busy. Sports is thank goodness we have something to talk about because there's so much going on in the world. I don't know how much you've noticed about some bad behavior. We've talked about it a little bit, but the bad behavior is getting off the charts.
It is, and it's disconcerting as I think that for me it represents just people. I think the discontent of many people in society, and also just a disregard for humanity. People are acting out, they're lashing out across the board, but they don't consider one another, which is a big uh, one of our big benchmarks that we care about equity, diversity, and inclusion, but we also care about kindness. I mean, at the core, all of those things are rooted in kindness. And I think much of that is absent from the world today. And I don't want to say that that's not true. I think the publicized things we see, the negativity is sensationalized and publicized. So there's certainly kindness out there in the world. And I think that that's something that we really ought to be mindful of and remember that just what we see on TV isn't necessarily representative of life in our community and our neighborhoods. So, be mindful of that, certainly.
People definitely don't have or not showing examples of compassion, empathy, caring, belonging. We can use so many positive words, but it's coming from not just the kids; it's coming from parents as well. It's like their social development went out the window, and
Well,
even
yeah.
former. I heard a story of a former NFL players getting into a brawl at an amateur football game. I'm going, you got to be kidding me.
And keep in mind, even when it's the kids, it really emanates from the parents. It stems from the parents. So the parents are responsible in many respects, whether their absence is creating havoc in a child's life or their presence. That's just the reality. And not everybody has parents on the scene, but they typically have adults that are behind them in some fashion. They're not living alone, of course. But all right, let's switch to something positive quickly. We got George G. Hi, George. Welcome to the program, and we're glad to have you here. And our main man Justin is here as well. Hi, Justin. Happy to have you guys here. So
So we've
I
got
don't.
we've got Ohio in the building on the program, and we've got Boston on the program. Oh my goodness. Can't get away from Ohio and Boston. Oh, I'm a Phillies fan. Come on, guys.
Well, we have Philly, we have New York, and we have Dallas. So we're scattered across the country for sure. Um, Justin's bringing it up. I mean, and I don't know if we want to delve into it. Or we're done with our top story we want to talk about. Do you want to talk about any of those particular instances?
Well, I think if you want something to change, you have to talk about it. You can't hide it. You can't bury your head in the sand. You can't wish it away. You have to do something. You have to take action. And there's a number of ways to take action, right? It starts with having a dialogue, having a conversation, bringing it to people's attention, right? Maybe other people will speak up. And then it goes from there to a collective group of people having conversations, and then a collective group of people saying, well, what are we going to do about it? Enough talk. Let's take some action, right? And so, again, I don't know the stories that you've heard or read in the paper or heard over the airwaves, but from kids reenacting a slave trade, I mean, that just boggles my mind. What in the world makes them think that is something that is funny? They say they were doing it as a prank or as a joke. What makes them think that's funny? Then you've got grown adults, again, fighting at amateur games. You've got refs feeling like their personal safety is at jeopardy when they're reffing games. And it's not just men, it's women too. It's equal across the board. People are they're just demonstrating bad behavior. And the goal of sports is to it is a vehicle for teaching moments, not just in terms of the X's and O's, but it teaches you about life. And people aren't good examples of it. And so no wonder the kids are acting out of their mind, because apparently there are no adults in the room having conversations with these kids, providing guidance so they can develop the right way, because these things are going to go on their record. They're going to have some hard opportunities getting into college when it's found out that they participated in these bad behaviors. I'm sure some schools will let them in, but most schools, from the conversations I'm having with coaches and some leaders on campuses, remember back when the internet really blew up and the conversation was to the kids, be careful what you post, it'll follow you. Well, it's true. Campuses don't want kids on their campus who've demonstrated bad behavior, because if you did it while you were living under your parents' roof, what are you going to do when you're not under their roof?
Well, before you get too far into the story, I didn't hear the story about what you started off with, your lead off about the slave trade. Where was it rooted? I mean, I saw the chanting at the basketball game with the Mormons, right? You know, F the Mormons. Did you see that?
I read about that one.
Yeah, so that was by a whole body, and nobody stepped in. Administrators, parents, people, they just brushed that off. That was certainly discriminatory and certainly inflammatory and degrading at the least. But I didn't see what you're referring to in regards to the slave.
It happened in California. A high school football team decided to reenact a slave trade purchased skit. Now, again, if the kids were in drama class, or they're in acting class, or they're in drama theater class, or whatever the proper term of that would be in high school, that's one thing. But these kids were football players, either before practice or after practice. And it's just, and so now what happens is, just like what happened in Middletown, Pennsylvania, they had to cancel the entire football season. They did the same in this situation. So the kids who didn't participate, who are good kids, now have to find a way to transfer. If their goal is to go to college and play football, now they have to transfer in the middle of the season to another school, so the coaches who are recruiting could at least see them play the remainder of the season, right? So it doesn't just hurt the kids who participated in the act, it hurts the kids who did not participate. It hurts the whole school. What about the cheerleaders? Cheerleading is a big business, right? I think kids get scholarships. They compete at Disney if they're still doing it, right? On competitions. So, I mean, it's a ripple effect.
Yeah, so I'm looking at it now. I mean, if you see the picture, I mean, I'm not going to play the video, but I don't. Did you see it?
Nope.
So it's three young Black football players. So it shows the three Black team members standing at the far side of the room in their underwear with their hands folded in front of them, while the other team members point at them, and they reenacted a slave sale as a certainly beyond offensive. And right, so all of the players were immediately suspended, but then of course the team had to forfeit the entire season, like you said. And this story goes to reference in May, a group of students at a different high school in Cincinnati put up blacks only and whites only signs on water fountains, reminiscent of Jim Crow's segregation laws. So that's certainly a step back. I thought that we were making progress in the world of race relations, especially in respect to the younger people, the younger generation. I mean, California is certainly a liberal state. It seems really shocking. I'm shocked, really.
No, it may not necessarily be about racism. To me, not knowing all of the information, what I know off the top of my head is decision making. They're making bad decisions. They may have thought, hey, listen, let's do something fun, but that particular in that context, it's not funny. Again, if they were in theater class, right, they're actors, they want to grow up to be Hollywood actors. Well, do something like that in a controlled environment with a teacher that says, hey, this is part of some, maybe, Roots, that they're working on a theater play of Roots. I could understand that. But if it's in this context, it's crazy. It's decision making. So I'd rather start there than to move 100 miles an hour and go from 0 to 100 miles an hour and say the kids were racist. Well, what about the Black kids? Were they forced to do? Well, were the Black kids forced to do it, or were they just bad decision making, thinking, oh, this is going to be fun? It's dumb, right? The pranks we did as kids back in the 70s, early 80s, right, were nowhere as dumb as these, but they were still dumb, right? But they didn't get the kind of attention that this type of behavior gets. So, I mean, again, I wasn't a clean kid. I made mistakes, but I mean,
well, it sounds like it was clearly orchestrated. So I don't necessarily think that the Black teammates were forced to do it. It said the recording clearly demonstrates that this situation was orchestrated and organized, which understand this I believe it's the superintendent of schools, which underscores my concern that students spend time contemplating this terrible act without the slightest regard that this action is hateful and hurtful. So it's hard to say. It doesn't really speak to, if everybody was a willing participant, it's hard to know. So.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Here's another thing. Here's another thing, and I'm just piggybacking off of this story, and it really has. I have no knowledge of what happened. And this could be across the board in any situation, but oftentimes, for instance, let's say that you don't know, whatever was the result of that, whether they were willing participants or not, and this is just an off-board comment, not relating to anything like that. But oftentimes when parents get involved, then we get lawyers involved, and then people start to get sued, and it turns into, we may never know the entire story. And because everybody shuts down because some people want to. And I think that there is a time and place for lawsuits, but I think in other instances, it's just about the money grab, right? So it's hard to. I think lawsuits can serve as a very poignant and significant social commentary and a significant lesson, but then I think there are other times when it's utilized simply as a payday. So I think it's tough. You know,
I think this is a teachable moment. I have doing what I do in terms of having conversations with folks in all walks of life, business, nonprofit, sports, the police industry, because those are the people I talk to. But specifically, let's stick with sports space and the educational space. There are leaders in these industries who are not doing their job. They're there, and I try, you know me, I try to be positive. There are a lot of good athletic directors out there. There's a lot of good teachers and administrators out there, without a doubt, right? I can't talk to all 20 million of them or 10 million of them. But what I have learned is there is a small percentage of folks out there who are just collecting a check. They're not providing the resources that the kids need, comprehensive resources. What I mean by that is, yeah, they're providing the weight room, they're providing meals, they're providing education, because kids have to get a certain grade point average, right? If they're going to go to a certain college, right?
Yeah.
But they're not providing the social development and the social resources that these kids need to become well-rounded so they can reach their full potential. Okay? So some of them are really seriously out there collecting a check or out there looking for their next bigger job, right? They don't necessarily care about these kids, right? They only care about their agenda, their goal, what they're trying to accomplish. Again, small percentage. Let me say this again, small percentage. But that small percentage is pretty big when you look at the total number, right? There are coaches out there, there are leaders out there in the sports industry, in the high school, college industry. There are educators out there who do a great job, absolutely do a great job. But there's a small few bad apples or indifferent apples who don't care. They just want to do enough to get the kids moving on till the next group comes in, or till they can get, they want that winning record so they can get and elevate themselves to the next level. And I'm telling you, I that's the impression I get. And it's definitely true until proven otherwise. That's what I know, a small percentage, but that small percentage is a large group across when you add across the board. Does that make sense? Did I say that right?
You did. And that goes with anything. I think anything that we see publicized today, anything negative, every single profession in the world is tainted by bad apples. And I think that, people stereotype lawyers are, I forget the term.
Ambulance chasers.
Right, ambulance chasers. But there are certainly, I've worked in the criminal justice system for decades, and there are some very, very noteworthy public defenders who are making nothing, right, and really are out there trying to help the common good. So,
absolutely, there's some very good lawyers and attorneys out there, without a doubt. I know quite a few. My freshman year, I lived at the dorm I lived in across the street from my dorm was our law school. I know quite a few lawyers. There's some really good ones out there, no doubt about it. But then there's the bad apples, those who just chase the almighty dollar. Yep.
And yep, true of anything. All right, so let's move on. I think Justin's dying to speak about. He's messaging me on the side, but I think that this is a big story this week, and I do want to talk about it. Tom Brady is getting divorced. I think it's very sad to me in many respects that so much attention is being paid to a private matter. I think that Gisele's being villainized, and I'm thinking about it. And first I want to say hi, Brandon. Brandon says hello, my queen, Joanne and Bo. Great, good to see you here, Brandon. We're happy to have you. But I think the thing about it is I look from it from two perspectives, right? You have Tom, who football careers are short. Professional athletic careers are short. And I'm sure that, that's probably in the forefront of his mind. And I'm thinking that on the other flip side, Gisele is saying, well, childhoods are short too. And she's advocating for her children. So, he's missed a large part of his children's lives. And I can assimilate with that. I can empathize with that. My husband travels a lot and has missed big chunks of my children's lives. So I see it on both sides. But I think the really disturbing thing is, and of course, I'm speculating. I have no idea what's going on in their marriage, but I think that it's unfortunate, and we're shining such a spotlight on them, and but of course we do that with all celebrities, but it's really unfair. And Brandon saying, wait, what? Tom is getting divorced? No way, LOL. But I think we've all heard about it, and it's sad, and I feel for both of them. And I think it's impacting his play. I don't think Tom's doing as well this season because he's distracted. And we got some young talent that's hard to who are at the top of their game, and it's hard to stay focused.
Well, again, I'm gonna try to look at the positive side if there is one, or look at a different angle. This may not necessarily be the final straw. Maybe they both hired divorce attorneys to prove a point, their particular point. Like her point might be, hey, dude, I'm serious. You need to retire. Again, we're speculating. And then his point is, okay, you're hiring an attorney, I'm gonna hire one too, right? Because I'm serious too. Let's give me 1 or 2 more years. Okay, again, I'm speculating, but if they actually, it's just like we say with Gronk, right? I'll believe it when the name is signed on the contract, right? On the retirement papers. I'll believe it when they are officially signed, sealed, and delivered and divorced. Other than that, they just could be working this out, right? They could just be, it's a chess game, right? This is the only way she thinks, or they both think they can prove, or get their, not prove, but get their point across. Because if their kids are 12, in that young teenage,
We're young. I think
it's going to be tough on them because of the society that we live in. Everything is at everybody's fingertips, and you know what I mean. So why would you want to put your kids through that, right? I mean, it's before the divorce words hit went viral. There's only so much you could do publicly with your kids because you get swamped, right? Because it's Gisele and Tom. Like, they can't just walk up. Name a restaurant that you go to, you've been to more than 3 times. What are the chances of them as a couple and a family showing up at that restaurant and not get inundated with, oh, sign this autograph, sign this autograph? Not just one parent, but both, right?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily going out. They could be spending time at home together. I'm sure they have an expansive estate, and so their children are aging. Jack's already 15 and playing football himself. I don't know. No, Jack's not playing football. I think that his oldest son isn't interested in football, but it's his middle son who's playing football, who I believe he's 12. Yeah, his middle son is 12. And I forget which one of their sons is interested in football, one of the two. And then they have a daughter who is 9. So if you give them 2 more years, right, you got a 17-year-old, a 14-year-old, and those boys are essentially gone, right? So I have a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old, and they already want to spend very limited time with me. They want to be with their friends. So I'm sure and I'm sure Gisele's probably lonely. It's a lonely life, probably, regardless of how much money and fame you have. And I think he committed to her that on that retirement, right? And it's probably a broken promise, and that's hard to swallow. But at the end of the day, it's absolutely none of our business, and that's really my point. It's absolutely none of our business. George is saying if Tom would have committed to retirement, I think it may still have been an issue. I don't know, perhaps, right? Perhaps. So, and Justin saying that I don't know. I didn't see the tweet, but I'm assuming it wasn't very good. Antonio Brown tweeted, and he's indicating that he wants to date Gisele. I'm sure that's going over well.
That dude has lost his mind.
So, yeah. So Justin has another story before we get into two stories. But, I really do want to talk about this one. And it's one of the big controversies of the week. Tua, had that devastating injury. The second in a week. I mean, and I'm sure you've seen the clips. We've all seen the clips or watched the game. He should have never been put in my opinion, in the first game, right? He could barely stay in his feet initially, and then they put him back in, and then he suffered. That could be a life-altering injury, with all of the the CTE. That should certainly be a big concern for the NFL. And in my perspective, and this goes for any organization, any company, the health and safety of your players should come first. And I don't think that that's necessarily true in the NFL. I know they're taking strides to make some changes, but I mean, what happened this week does not demonstrate that. I think it's contrary to their public commentary that, they're so concerned about CTE when, I think that I was very disturbed and troubled to see him in the game and then have to be taken out with an injury. So I don't know what your thoughts are.
Well, remember who you're talking to. You're talking to a former strong safety, free safety, whose nickname is the Hammer. So I've had plenty of concussions myself, and some I did not even say that I had a concussion, or you couldn't notice. I was able to hide it. Some, obviously, they were able to tell that I wasn't right. And so I have a box full of paper, full of news articles, magazines. Remember the movie Will Smith did about that doctor who actually discovered that football players had the CTE? I have that full magazine on that issue. So I've read a lot about it, because in the front and back of my mind, I have no idea if I have some form of it and won't know until it's too late. So I feel, you feel bad? I feel really bad, because to see him laying on the ground, in the form, did you see the form, right? The way he was, I mean, it looked like he got run over by a truck, right?
Right.
So, yeah, one person got fired so far, but the NFLPA, the Players Association, they've got to be raising holy HE double hockey sticks because
Well,
that was a bad look.
yeah, it was a bad look. And the person who was fired, of course, is a consultant, not a, they brought in these independent consultants, and I'm sure you're aware of it, but they I believe each team has an independent consultant that is supposed to be entirely neutral and is supposed to be assessing these concussions as part of their new concussion protocol. And he wasn't the only one. They said that he was not the only one to make the determination that he could go back on the field. But I'm not sure, how could you possibly make that determination? His hands were contorted. It wasn't like he was just, it was just, even from the first knockout, he should have never been put back in the game. And I wonder if this individual is the fall guy. And really, wouldn't this decision, I tend to believe this decision, that this independent consultant really has to answer to the front office. I think it's just like, it's reminiscent to me of the sham interviews last year, right? Bringing in the sham interviews of, the black coaches who, on paper, there was a certain protocol that, so we were going to be diverse and give, equity. And it seems to me that's how I feel today, is if that concussion protocol was something just put on paper, and the intent really isn't being followed. And I'm sure I have to believe that, the coaches had some say in putting him back in, or, this independent individual who was a doctor. I find it hard to believe they would have made that assessment, seeing what the rest of the world saw.
Well, that's what the NFLPA, the Players Association leader, is going to conduct an investigation, and somebody is going to be in trouble, because the NFLPA will take this thing to court. Somebody made the decision. And just so the folks out there who aren't football savvy, like George and Justin and some of our other guests, Brandon, he got concussed in the game before, at the end of the first half. He came back in the game the second half. So the issue is him coming back in the game the second half, and then his baseline of testing that he's supposed to do and go through before the next game. Apparently, there were some errors in that testing that allowed him to play in the game where he was seriously injured and removed and taken to the hospital. So that's where that's the red line, right? What happened? Why did he go back into the second half of the game previous week? What testing did they do during the week? And what testing results that happened that made them have the decision to say he's going to start the next game? Somebody's in trouble, because it's on tape, and you can't get around it, right? You can't get around it. That is a bad look. And the NFLPA, the NFLPA's job is to protect its members, meaning the players. So this thing is going to get big. What is George? George, you got me putting on my glasses, dude.
George said the coaches cannot make any decisions in that matter. Only after the independent doctor clears a player, then they can go in. And since Tua was hit the game before, it was only 3 days apart between games. I think on paper, the coaches, I know we're saying that, but it's, we don't always follow the rules. And so, and Tim is here. Hi, Tim. It's good to see you. He's saying, so did Tua lie? He said it was a back injury. So maybe Tua lied to go back into the game. That's possible. I haven't read that. Could be true.
Yep, I heard that.
So, so there's something to be said for that. Justin is pointing out that, players want to get back into the game, and that's true. Players want to play. Players just want to play. So, and then,
but what's your response after that, Joe? When a player says he wants to play, what should be the response after that?
Is that we have professionals who are in places, managers, coaches, owners, doctors who are in place and get paid very well to make those determinations.
Right. They're there to protect the player. The player is not going to protect him or herself. there are protocols and other people with other job responsibilities, and their job is to protect the player from him or herself. Because Justin's right, players are going to want to play. Their leg is going to have to be falling off. Their elbow is going to have to be out of socket, or they're going to need to be laying down concussed in order to get them out of a game. Exactly correct.
True. All right. Well, let's jump to something happy and positive. We want to mention we're not going to focus a lot on baseball. We had number 62 this week. Aaron Judge hit number 62. I thought it was, I don't know if you saw it, but one of the fans, he had tried to catch the ball.
61.
He went over the fence and didn't do it. So he is now went ahead and beat Roger Maris' record. So he's at 62 home runs. So that's exciting. George is saying.
And someone's already bid $2 million for it already.
He did? All right. At least with that, it's not going to be like the Tom Brady ball, right? It's still going to be 62 no matter what. So it won't be like last year. George is commenting, it's very true about players, but as a coach, I even have a kid that I'm not playing him tomorrow after he took a head hit today. He said he will be fine tomorrow, not on my watch. So, and that's the way all coaches should be. So I appreciate that, George. But so back to Aaron Judge, I think that was an exciting week, an exciting moment. And I'm glad the season ended like that. We needed it, or we needed some positivity in the baseball season and in the world. So that's exciting. All right.
Hat change.
Is it a Yankees hat?
No, I got the Eagles hat on. The number one team in the NFL. Are you kidding me? Come on. I gotta do a little bit of bragging. No. Great kudos to Here Comes the Judge. And there'll be lots of debates on whether or not it's the official home run record because of Barry Bonds and all that stuff. We'll worry about that later during the playoffs. But so that's some good news. And the other good news is I'm winning in the picks. You missed week 3 because of you were on the injured reserve list. So I don't have your picks for that week. So based on week 1, 2, and 4, Hold
on one second. I have my notes right here. I picked winners every winner of that week. Every one of my winners came in.
Well, even if you
tally the scores.
Even if you did, you still ain't catching me because you had so many other bad picks that I'm ahead. And we don't have time to go over. We don't have time to go over all of them. But let's just we'll try to catch up next week. But what we're gonna do some highlights. Let's do quickly college, and then we'll go right to the pros. This weekend, there's quite a few games because we're into week 5. So there's going to be some good college games on this week. Utah versus UCLA, that's 11 versus 18. Tennessee versus LSU, 8 versus 25. TCU versus Kansas, that's 17 versus 19. Texas A&M, although they're not ranked, very good team, versus Alabama, who's ranked number 1. Number 2, Georgia is going against Auburn. Auburn's not ranked, but that's a rivalry game. Texas A&M versus Oklahoma State, rivalry games. And of course, Ohio State, number 3 versus Michigan State. That's a Big Ten matchup. So there's going to be some good games college-wise to watch this weekend. And does any of them appeal to you?
Not particularly.
Okay. But those are.
I'm not as savvy in the college football game, so I do. Justin saying roll tide. I know he's a fan. I am not, so I definitely, I'm never going to pick Alabama, even when they're number 1. I don't care for that team, and I think that's. Tim is saying nope, go Grizzlies. So. Kansas football's for real. I don't want to wait in there because first of all, I'm doing so poorly in the NFL. I don't want to come up with all losers in the college picks too.
And I'm sure,
So
and I'm sure George is thinking shout out to Ohio State since he's in Ohio, so it's all good.
so
It's all good.
I mean, I like the traditional teams, of course. I like the Fighting Irish. I'm one of the Fighting Irish, so I love that.
I didn't write them down, but they actually have a game they need to win this weekend because they're 2-2. So,
and I like Syracuse, Penn State. I watch those teams, and I follow them loosely. Those are teams I like to watch. But besides that, the Hurricanes. I like the Miami Hurricanes. One of my friends is going down to a game, going down to the Saturday game. So I've always been a Hurricane fan, really on his coattails. So things like that.
Penn State is ranked in the top 10, so that's a good pick. That's a good team to watch. Excuse me, especially here in the state of Pennsylvania. And so again, as I say to people, there's only really 5 states in this union where you get good talent: Florida, California, Texas, Pennsylvania, and Ohio. So
I do always marvel about that there really are no good. Well, Syracuse, sometimes Syracuse has a good team, but for the most part, New York doesn't really pull any good football teams at the college level. It's a rarity for sure.
Well, the Northeast is really a basketball region. Basketball rules in the Northeast, right? That's why Penn State gets a lot of pub. Syracuse, when they're good, gets a lot of pub. Boston College, when they're good, gets a lot of pub because there's not 25 or even 10. You can't name 10 major college football teams in the Northeast. You can probably name 5: Penn State, Pitt, Boston College, Rutgers, Syracuse. I'll go Connecticut, who's gone up and down a couple of times from big time football to Division I AA.
Justin saying Clemson.
Clemson is not in the Northeast, Justin. Clemson is an ACC team. So, but you got to go more Ohio State, Michigan State, Midwest, and over. That's when football becomes big time. But in the Northeast, right, it's all basketball. Okay. It's all basketball. And it's really because of the big cities that are also in the Northeast. It's just the culture. Basketball rules in the Northeast. That's just the way it is. Oh, I can't forget Temple here in Philadelphia. So I don't want my Owl fans to be crushing me. So, but yeah, let's jump to the pros.
All right. So let's start with the Viking Saints. That was a great game over in London, tight. The Vikings pulled it out. That was exciting. Very early morning game, right? 9:30 on Sunday. That was early for us in the Northeast. That means on the West Coast, it was 6:30 a.m. So I don't know if any of our West Coast gentlemen got up to watch the game.
They should have. They almost lost that game. You know that, right?
Yeah. That was it. It was a good one. Yeah, but that's really, since my experience with the Vikings is that when they do win, it's usually tight and they just squeak it out. And most often they're on the losing end, right? Of these close games, they very often are don't pull it off, in my opinion. But yeah, so I was happy to see them. What other close games did we have? The Seahawks and the Lions. I mean, the Lions are looking pretty good this year. The record isn't necessarily, they're not always coming up with the win, but they're good every week. It seems like they really have a tight score. So that was an exciting game.
They have a good quarterback. Remember, he used to be the quarterback of the Rams until they switched quarterbacks. if that ownership can put together more offensive players, especially the offensive line, to protect that quarterback, oh my goodness, Detroit, and they have a decent defense. They're just a few steps away because they have a franchise quarterback. If you have a franchise quarterback, you can win in this league. So they got to give that coach a chance. So I would agree.
Yeah, they still are 1-3, but I think that they're right there.
Yeah,
I think
they're right there.
Talent.
Right
Jets Steelers was a close game, 24-20. All right, so the Eagles Jags. I mean, that was a conflict for you, right? You chose the Eagles. That was a fairly close game. 8 points, but that was a good game as well. They squeaked it out.
Well, we'll put it this way. Well, let's stick with the Eagles in Jacksonville. I'll take off my Eagles hat and put on my Jags hat because I was going back and forth with my brother-in-law. Remember, the Jags jumped out on top 14-zip, and the Eagles came back and won. But what that states is Jacksonville has a really good coach who was instrumental in the Eagles winning the Super Bowl. He was Donovan McNabb from Syracuse. He was Peterson was Donovan McNabb's backup when Donovan was the starting quarterback for the Eagles. So Peterson is a quarterback. He's a quarterback's coach. So he's going to help the Jags quarterback become a better quarterback, right? It's just unfortunately he turned the ball over himself 5 times, but he's got to understand you're playing in the rain. You can't be lollygagging with the ball. You gotta be careful with that rock in the rain, right? The kid is good. They're going to be good. They are actually ranked in the they're ranked in the top 10 of NFL teams with a 2-2 record. So other people who evaluate those teams see something good in Jacksonville. They put it this way: the season, if it ended today, is a better season than they had last year. Remember what happened with Urban Meyer last year?
I do.
Right.
Yeah, that was
so.
And they're on top of their division. I mean, the Titans and Jaguars are tied 2-2. I mean, it's so early on that doesn't really mean much, but yeah, it doesn't mean much, but. But it doesn't hurt to be on top no matter when you're on top. you have that bragging. Yeah.
A win is a win. Bottom line. When it's time to go to the playoffs at the end of the season, we're not going to be talking about who won in week 3 or week 5. We're going to be saying, you're in the playoffs. Good for you.
True. So the Bills-Ravens, the Bills, they pulled it off, but yeah,
that was a game.
Yeah, that was a game. They had some trouble, so I'm glad they squeaked it out. Josh Allen squeaked it out, but, I was worried. I was worried there for a bit.
Well, again, I might have mentioned this last week or the week before. There's 3 tiers of quarterbacks. There's your TB12 crew, right? Hall of Famers, Tom Brady, Ron, Russell Wilson, Stafford, the guys who won Super Bowl. Then the next tier below is the guys who are on the verge. Oh, Patrick Mahomes up there, right? And then the next tier below are guys who are on the verge, the quarterback of the Ravens, like Jackson, and guys like him, right? Buffalo Bills quarterback, the quarterback for the Chargers, the quarterback from Detroit. There's a number of those guys in that crew. And then there's the beginning tier. You talked about the Jets game and the Pittsburgh game. Did you see how they finally took Trubisky out and put the backup in? That kid is pretty good, isn't he? Right?
He was.
That there's a lot of good quarterbacks. The quarterback of the Jets, who finally is healthy, right? The Pittsburgh quarterback, who's now starting he played at Pitt, University of Pittsburgh. There's a handful of some young quarterbacks in this league that is going to create a name for themselves. So I'm telling you that if you look at the schedule, if you look at the standings, there's maybe two or three bad teams in the league. Everybody else is either 2-2 or 3-1, 2-2, right? This thing is everybody's pretty much in this. So I think it's a good season. And then what I'm trying to say is, for the first quarter of the season, there's parity, right? Everybody's almost on equal footing. So this next quarter, the next 4 games, going to be very interesting.
And we say that, but then we just for instance, we were just talking about the teams right on the cusp, like the Lions. As anything could turn that team around, and they could, because they're so close. Most of their games they could have won. If one call or one play had gone another way, they could have won. So
If they win
it,
if they win the next 2, they'll be 3-3. And they'll probably be tied for their division lead or in second place. So
True.
no, I'm telling you, there's no, other than the Eagles being 4-1. But guess what? The Giants are 3-1. The Cowboys are 3-1. So the Eagles being 4-0 doesn't mean diddly. Because once we play those teams, we'll see who comes out on top. And we are playing Dallas after this week, after Arizona. Eagles are playing Dallas. It's a must win for both teams.
Yeah, Dallas is doing well. The Buccaneers lost this week. I wasn't happy to see that. Cowboys are looking pretty good. George is saying he's jumping ahead to the picks already. Not to steal South Park's line, but Buffalo is going to kill Kenny this week. Bills favored by 14 points. Not since 1970 have the Steelers been unfavored by 13.5. So I'm going with Buffalo as well, George. I don't know if we're ready to jump to the picks. It's 9:58. Let me take a look at did we cover everything?
Yeah, we covered everything. Let's go over the picks.
All right. So we got you want me to read them off? You have your glasses. You have to put your glasses on.
Yeah, I got it written down right here. I'll call it out. You tell me who you're going to pick.
Okay.
Tomorrow night, Colts versus Broncos.
I'm going to go with the Colts. Well, first of all, how did we do in the picks last week? What are the numbers? I lost most games.
You only won 6 and I won 7. So I got you last week by 1.
Okay.
And actually, I gave you 1 because we didn't discuss the Rams 49ers. So we basically split that one. So instead of me being 7 and you being 6, I'm 8 and you're 7. So I gave you 7 wins. I gave myself another win. All right.
Well, remember the 49ers are one of my teams, so I would have picked the 49ers.
That's why I gave you the win. Right. Thank you very much. Okay, so you're picking the Colts. I'm picking the Broncos.
Okay.
See, that's tomorrow night. Okay, Sunday, Seattle versus New Orleans.
I'm gonna take the Saints.
You taking the Saints?
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm taking Seattle. Atlanta at Tampa, TB12.
I'm gonna take TB.
Me too. Detroit at New England. And they're both 1-3. Whoever loses this game is in trouble.
I'm going to take the Lions.
You know what? I think I'm going to take the Lions too. Because our quarterback from Jacksonville is still not playing. So they got their backup in. Chicago versus Minnesota. You going Minnesota, aren't you?
That's a tough one, but I'll go Minnesota.
I'm going Minnesota too because it's in Minnesota. Dallas at the Rams.
I'm going to go with Dallas.
I'm going Rams. Philly, Arizona.
I'll go with the Eagles.
Okay. Giants versus Green Bay.
I'm going Green Bay.
Yeah, I'm going Aaron. Tennessee versus Washington. I'm going Tennessee.
I'm going Tennessee too. Washington's not looking great at all.
They're terrible.
Yeah.
Pitt versus Buffalo. I know who you're going.
I'm going Buffalo.
The Chargers, LA Chargers versus Cleveland. I'm going Chargers.
I'm going Chargers.
Miami versus the Jets. That's a rivalry game.
I'm going Miami.
Me too. Woo, look at that.
Did you pick the Bills?
Huh?
Did you pick the Bills?
Earlier?
Yeah.
Yeah, Buffalo versus Pitt.
Okay, yeah, you didn't say. George said the Packers versus Giants is in London. Be careful on that pick. I still want the Packers. I don't think the Giants are going to pull that off.
No, I don't like their. If they don't give their running back the ball enough, I don't trust them. No. Houston Jags. I'm going with my Jags.
I'm going with the Jags.
Ooh. I know who you got on this one. San Francisco versus Carolina.
I'm going the 49ers.
Me too. Cincinnati, Baltimore. That's the game of the weekend right there.
Oh boy. I think I'm going to take the Ravens.
In Baltimore. You taking the Ravens?
I'm taking the Ravens.
I'm taking the Ravens too. And then Monday night, the Raiders versus the Chiefs.
I like the Chiefs. Where is it?
In Kansas City.
Yeah,
that's a shame because that means the Raiders are going to be 1-4 at the end of that game. They've only won one game.
Yeah,
that's a shame. But it's the way the ball bounces. You got to win games. Just win, baby.
Should we get Chris's picks quickly or behind the scenes?
Yeah, let's do it behind the scenes. I asked him to send me his picks last week, but he didn't. That's okay. We'll get it at the end of. We'll get it off.
Well, George has a good point. George is taking the Jets because Tua is going to be off. Dolphins will be MIA. No pun intended.
No, but remember who they got as a backup. Bridgewater. Bridgewater's a good quarterback.
Yeah, true. Yeah, true.
Yeah, I think George. I think the Jets isn't ready to compete. Miami's got a really, really good defense. They're just not there yet.
All right, so we're 10:04. We got a lot in. We talked about some social commentary, which I love. That's the piece I like. I love the NFL, but I also like talking about the things that are impacting society. And I love, we sometimes get away from that, but we really like to tie in sports and how it can benefit humanity and especially youth. I think that that's really one of your hallmarks as well. That really the youth culture and so I think that's one of the reasons why we're so enamored and why George is so endearing to us, because he's a coach and he's really furthering and mentoring the youth of today. So I want to, of course, give George a shout out for coming in. We had Brandon here, Justin, Tim. Yeah, we had a good crowd tonight, and I see you behind the scenes. Those of you who didn't speak up, we know you're there, and we thank you for tuning in and listening, and for everybody who joined in. We appreciate the commentary, and it makes the show better. So so thank you. George is throwing in, don't sleep on them. Sela is getting that team together. He has learned that from Shanahan. All right, so it's good to think about. Oh, what do you got? Golf? You wanted to?
Shout out to the American team for winning the international competition 2 weeks ago.
All right. Maybe we can talk about that again next week. And of course, the biggest game of the week we forgot to talk about. We didn't mention it.
What's that?
The Sailors versus Huron tomorrow at 5 p.m. Georgia's team, right? So of course that I'm going with the Sailors. Put that on my picks. I always pick the Sailors.
Absolutely. We're in the corner. We're in your corner, G3.
And I forgot, I want to order the swag. George sent me the link. I gotta get on that before the season's over, so we can give a shout out to the sailors. I'll do that tonight, actually. And of course, no show is complete without our friend behind the scenes, Chris P. Bacon. He keeps us running, and usually he's got us on time. He had us on a couple minutes late tonight, but it never hurts to be fashionably late sometimes, especially when we're holding our sign upside down, our swag upside down. So it's a good way to start off the show. So, all right, everybody, have a good week. Happy NFL. Happy Columbus Day. We got a long weekend, so we can recover from Sunday. And we'll see you next week. And good luck, Sailors. Go Sailors.